So this morning we're going to look at the Vedana, which is the fourth of the five skandhas, one of them in the fourth one we're going to look at. So we're just going to do a bit of a recap of what we've done so far. So we've got some slides coming up. So we saw that the five skandhas are Rupa, Vijnana, Samjnana, Vedana and Samskara, which is form, consciousness, perception, feeling, tone and volition. And we saw skandhas can be translated as heaps or aggregates, and they make up conditioned existence. And if we see the nature of the skandhas, and as it says in the Heart Sutra, we can sunder the bonds that cause us suffering. So in the first week, we looked at Rupa, and we looked at the four elements, earth, water, fire and air. And we looked that Rupa was also the six sense bases, so the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body and mind. Then the following week, we looked at the nature of consciousness. And we saw there were six consciousnesses, one for each of the senses. Recap, the mind is one of the senses in Buddhism. And then last week we looked at sanya, or perception. So we looked that there were six types of sanya relating to the six sense spaces and their consciousnesses. We saw that sanya can be accurate or inaccurate, clear or unclear, without characteristics, and related to each of the three realms of existence. So this brings us nicely on to Vedana. So Vedana can be translated as feeling tone or hedonic tone. And it's every experience is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So every experience is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So we're going to explore this this morning. So sometimes Vedana is just translated as feeling, and this is an unfortunate translation for us in the West or in the English language. If we ask someone how they're feeling, or how do you feel about a situation, we're actually asking for an emotional response rather than a Vedana. So feeling and emotion is very much kind of interchangeable terms. So if we're asking, if something's happened to someone, how you're feeling about that, we're actually asking about their emotional response, which is not Vedana. So Vedana is this tone of feeling, or I think it's Gunther who translates it as hedonic tone. So we're probably all familiar with the word hedonism, of pleasure. So it has a pleasure tone, each experience, and that pleasure tone may be pleasurable, it may be unpleasant, or it can be quite neutral. So not one or the other. Yeah, so that in a nutshell is Vedana. Quite often in the list of the skandhas, you have Rupa, Vedana, Sanya. So form, feeling, tone, and perception. And I'm doing them in a different order. We're exploring Rupa, form, then consciousness, then perception, and then Vedana or feeling tone. In a way, the skandhas are just five heaps. So they're just there, they're heaped up. And which one you go through first as you look around your five heaps, in some ways is quite irrelevant. But on another level, by exploring the process that goes on in terms of our interaction with the world, it can just help us understand the Five Skandhas in a little bit more depth. So in a way, either is right, that we can see Vedana before perception in certain instances, and certainly after perception. So to help us understand this, we need to go back to conditionality. We should have another slide coming up. Oh, I missed a slide. I forgot about this one. It probably already covered this. A Vedana is based on one of the five senses or on the mind sense. And then we'll move on to the next slide. So we saw in the first week that Ashaji, one of the Buddha's original disciples, gave the teaching regarding dharmas or things that arise from a cause. The Tathagata has taught their cause and also their cessation. So this is the law of conditionality, or praticca samuppada, dependent origination. And some of you will be familiar that there's 5 levels of, or orders of, conditionality. So I'll just recap these. So we have the inorganic, such as the realm of physics. We have the biological realm. We kind of have the working of the mind level of conditionality. We have a karmic level of conditionality, and we have a dharmic level of conditionality. This is kind of an unfoldment of spiritual experience, particularly beyond stream entry. Okay, we can lose that slide now. So these 5 levels of conditionality are at work variously, sometimes all the time, sometimes some of them. So when we look at Vedana, we have some Vedana that is more based on the biological and the working of the mind. So some Vedana actually comes straight after our experience of rupa and consciousness. You can even have Vedana with no consciousness from a physiological point of view. So we call this a reflex. Some of you may have had your reflexes tested. You may have been to the doctors or a physio, and they get you to dangle your knee down, and they kind of get a little hammer and bang your tendon, and your knee flicks up. So that's a reflex. And a reflex actually means that the signal from the tendon or from the nerves goes into the spine, and there's a feedback loop, and it goes right back out to the muscles involved. So it doesn't actually go to the brain at all. So there's no sense of consciousness. And, you know, the kind of reflex of the knee, there's certain, if you hold something or pick up something that's hot and you don't realize, there's a reflex. It happens very, very quickly. It's the body's way of protecting itself. So that could be an example of an unconscious response to Vedana. There's pain. We don't even respond to that, and we've actually responded and let go of the object as a result of that. So there's a reflex. The other aspect is you know, a kind of more animalistic mind responses to danger. So let's explore this a little bit more, because it's quite interesting. To do this, I'm going to probably answer a question most of you have pondered many, many times and may or may not have got an answer to, or may have not got the same answer to. So we know the Buddha broke free from suffering, and he saw through the fixed nature of self. And we saw in a couple of weeks ago that the Buddha's advice to Bhaya was in the seen, only the seen, in the heard, only the heard, and in the cognized, only the cognized, and so on. So if there isn't a sense of self, in the sense that we think of it, and there's not this kind of labeling of perception that we looked at last week. The big question about the Buddha is, if he was alive today, could he drive a car? So I know you've all contemplated this and wondered about this many, many times. I think the answer is yes. You'll be glad to know. I'll give a little story which maybe emphasizes this. Quite a number of years ago, we'd had some bad weather, it had been snowing and all the snow had cleared, and I was going to see a client, and there was I do a narrow cut through, and there was some ice still there. Sheet ice, no grip whatsoever, single track lane, car coming the other way on the other end of the sheet ice. Cars inevitably going together, closer and closer. I just thought, oh, I'm going to hit it. And I just kind of relaxed. I had that kind of look on my face of going, I can't do anything. You can't do anything. And when the dust settled, the cars were next to each other and we just clipped our wing mirrors. And to this day, I have absolutely no idea how that happened. But I can intellectually tell you how it happened. I must have steered and the other person must have steered. The fact that we didn't hit each other head on is just like, I have no idea how that didn't happen, because it was quite clear it was going to happen. So at times, the body, the mind takes over, and the whole kind of labeling thing and, oh, I'm going to hit this car head on, and that all went, and our kind of reactions take over. So a Buddha would have those same reactions. I think they can be symbolized, or in terms of represented in terms of our fight, flight and freeze response. Also the startle response. If we hear a loud noise and we jump, there's no conscious thing of, oh, there's a loud noise, let me jump. So it's a startle response. So there's certain Vedana that just arise, some without consciousness. And it's just how we are, it's how we're made, and it helps protect us in our environment. There's another lot of Vedana which is based on having a sense input, maybe a physical sense. So an example would be, we're introduced to someone, so we have a visual sense of someone. There's a consciousness of that visual sense. And as we looked at last week, there's often, in terms of perception, a comparing. So we kind of go, oh, haven't met this person, but there may be something about the person who reminds us of someone we like. So we'll naturally have a pleasant response to this person. Or conversely, they may remind us of someone we don't like. We've had difficulties with in the past. In which case, our Vedana, our response, will be an unpleasant one. Or they may not have any associations, and it may be quite neutral, our response. So we have this. So we have this comparing. We have the physical sensations, the eye consciousness, the eye perception, the label, and then we get a Vedana, whether that's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. That can also happen through the mind sense, that there may be something that arises in our mind. Remember, mind is head and heart in Buddhism. So yeah, so we also have that. So we get this, and we have Vedana, and it's pleasant, painful, or neutral. And in a way, it's really quite interesting that Vedana, that pleasant, painful, or neutral, is based on things that have happened in the past. It's based on past conditioning. So we can't actually do anything about our past Vedana. So if someone reminds us of someone in the past, it's just what's happened. And our Vedana, our pleasant, painful, neutral response to them, is based on that conditioning. It's just as it is. So this is really important. So Vedana is a response, or is conditioned by what's happened in the past. And it can be a whole range of those conditionality factors in place. So it could be a memory, it could be there's something, particular noises grate us, particular noises soothe us. Some of that could be a biological thing, could be something we've inherited from our parents, our genes. So it's just interesting to acknowledge that. So our Vedana, and say it again, is based on our past conditionality. So if you meet someone and we have a negative Vedana, someone we've not seen before, and we have a unpleasant Vedana, that's just based on past experience. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. How we respond to that, which we'll look at next week, is another matter. But the Vedana is based on our past conditioning. And it may be a karmic level of conditioning, it may be a biological level of conditioning. So if we want to change our Vedana, we can change maybe future Vedanas arising, but we can't change our present Vedana. So in a way, I'm not sure I want to say any more than that. So it's just worth contemplating Vedana. So to sum up, our experience, specific experience of Vedana, is based on our past conditions. We cannot change the Vedana in the moment, but our present actions can change future Vedana. So there we go.